was confident that I had a turn, and as long as I was still alive, that I knew that my turn would come, that I would have a chance to see exactly what I was able to do in the boxing ring, and if I was going to grow or anything like that. But I knew it would take time. Leon was a fast learner. Leon learned fast in St. Louis. It took me a long time to really learn how to,
Michael Spinks names his 6 toughest boxers. Not the most famous, not the biggest names, the ones who felt most dangerous inside the ring. Before we get to that list, you need to understand who Michael Spinks really was. He won Olympic gold in 1976. He became the undisputed light heavyweight champion. Then he did something no one had ever done before. He moved up and beat an undefeated heavyweight champion. Larry Holmes had 48 wins and 0 losses. Spinks took his title anyway, but most people only remember 91 seconds. That's how long it took Mike Tyson to knock him out. One fight erased everything else in people's minds. That's not fair to Spinks. He beat some of the greatest fighters who ever lived. His list of toughest opponents isn't about fame. It's about the men who pushed him hardest, the ones who made him earn every single victory. Some he beat, one he didn't, but all of them left a mark that lasted forever. Spinks was called Jinx because of how he moved in the ring. His style was awkward and hard to figure out. He'd lean back, throw punches from strange angles, and make champions look confused. That style took him to the very top of the sport. He stood on the Olympic podium in Montreal alongside his brother Leon. They were the first brothers ever to win both Olympic gold and professional world titles. That moment was just the beginning of an incredible journey. His professional record tells an amazing story. 31 wins and only 1 loss, 21 knockouts. He never lost a fight until he faced Tyson. It's an entire career without tasting defeat. Very few fighters in history can say that. The light heavyweight division in the early 1980s was loaded with talent. Historians call it the greatest era that weight class ever saw. Spinks didn't just compete in that era, he dominated it. He beat every top fighter they put in front of him. Let's start with the scariest name on the list. Mike Tyson tops every category Spinks ever talked about. Biggest puncher, fastest hands, strongest fighter. When Spinks spoke about Tyson, he didn't hold anything back. He said Tyson had power and hand speed that was hard to beat. That combination made him nearly impossible to solve. Their fight was supposed to settle everything. Tyson had all 3 major belts. Spinks was the lineal champion. The fight made $70 million. It was the richest fight in boxing history at that time. Everyone wanted to know who was really the best. Spinks earned $13.5 million for that fight. It was more than all his previous fights combined. The world was watching. The pressure was enormous. 2 undefeated champions were about to collide. The build-up to the fight was intense. Tyson was destroying everyone in his path. He looked like an unstoppable machine. Spinks was the thinking man's fighter. People wondered if intelligence could beat raw power. Spinks didn't last 2 minutes. Tyson knocked him out in 91 seconds. But what Spinks said about that knockout tells you everything about Tyson's power. He said the punch didn't even hurt. It felt like a slap, but it numbed his entire body. It paralyzed him. His nervous system just shut down. That's not normal punching power. Pain you can fight through. Spinks had been hurt before, but Tyson's punch went past pain. It turned off his body like a light switch. Spinks said he couldn't continue. He was paralyzed. His body stopped working. Tyson was thick as a tree but moved like a smaller man. He knew how to slide in real fast. He'd get close and land punches before you could react. The speed and power together made him impossible to handle. Spinks never hesitated when asked who hit hardest. He said Mike Tyson was definitely the biggest puncher he ever fought. This was the one fight Spinks couldn't get through. He said those exact words. Tyson was the force he couldn't solve. But Spinks showed up. He took the risk. He faced the monster when most fighters would have walked away. Years later, people still talk about that fight. Some even accuse Spinks of not trying. That's how fast it ended. But Spinks defended himself with honesty. He said Tyson simply had his number that night. The punch landed in the right spot and shut everything down. Now let's talk about a man Spinks beat twice but never stopped respecting. Larry Holmes was one of the smartest fighters who ever lived. Spinks beat him in 1985. Then he beat him again in 1986. But he never claimed he was better than Holmes. He just said he figured out how to win. Holmes was so well prepared for everything. His jab was one of the best weapons in heavyweight history. His defense was tight. You couldn't land clean shots on him easily. Spinks knew this going into their first fight. He was a huge underdog. Holmes had 48 wins and no losses. He was 1 win away from matching Rocky Marciano's record. The pressure on Holmes was massive. The whole world was watching to see if he could match Marciano. That pressure might have affected him, but Spinks wasn't thinking about history. He was thinking about winning. Spinks gained 25 pounds to move up and fight him. Nobody thought he had a chance. The bookmakers had him at 6-1, but Spinks had a plan. He used his awkward style to confuse Holmes. His herky-jerky movements threw off Holmes's timing. Spinks won a decision after 15 rounds. What beat Holmes wasn't strength. Spinks said it himself. What beat Larry was his experience and know-how. All those amateur fights came in handy. Spinks had learned so much over the years that he could solve puzzles other fighters couldn't. He made Holmes respect him in the ring. Spinks said he did so much to Larry during the fight that he earned that respect. It wasn't about being bigger or stronger. It was about being smarter and more experienced. The rematch was even closer. Most people thought Holmes won the second fight, but the Associated Press scored it for Holmes. HBO's score gave it to Holmes. A poll of 46 sports writers had 42 of them scoring it for Holmes. But the judges gave it to Spinks by a split decision. Holmes was furious. He told the judges and promoters to kiss him where the sun doesn't shine. But Spinks had done it again. He'd figured out the puzzle just barely. Over 30 rounds total, he'd beaten one of the greatest heavyweights ever. The toughness of Holmes wasn't about power. It was about his preparation and his skill. He was the ultimate puzzle, and Spinks solved him twice. That achievement alone would make most fighters legendary. But for Spinks, it was just part of an incredible run. Holmes had beaten everyone before Spinks came along. He'd defended his title 20 times. He'd beaten fighters like Ken Norton, Ernie Shavers, and Jerry Cooney. Everyone expected him to roll right through Spinks. But intelligence beat size that night. The fights between Spinks and Holmes showed what boxing is really about. It's not always about the biggest or the strongest. Sometimes the smartest fighter wins. Spinks proved that twice against one of the all-time greats. Next up is a man most people have never heard of, but Spinks knew exactly how tough he was. Dwight Muhammad Kawi used to be called Dwight Braxton. He was short and stocky, just 5 feet 7 inches tall. He was trained by Joe Frazier. He fought like a buzzsaw. He never stopped coming forward. His defense was tight. He was very hard to hit clean. But Spinks had a secret advantage. They used to be sparring partners. They boxed together every day. Spinks knew Kawi's style inside and out. He felt like he raised Kawi in the ring. Kawi said something interesting before their fight. He told Spinks he'd like to fight him for a lot of money, but he never said he wanted to win. Spinks went into that fight believing Kawi had already given up mentally. He thought Kawi knew he couldn't win. The fight was for all the light heavyweight belts. It was 15 rounds in Atlantic City. This was the fight that would make Spinks the undisputed champion. Everything was on the line. Spinks started with a swooping left hook that missed and a right hand that landed. That set the tone for the whole fight. Kawi respected that punch for all 15 rounds. Spinks won a clear decision. Kawi complained afterward that Spinks ran like a thief, but even Kawi admitted later that Spinks was the smartest opponent he ever faced. He said Spinks ran like a dog but was smart for doing so. The toughness of Kawi was in his pressure. For 15 full rounds, Spinks couldn't make a single mistake. Kawi was relentless. He forced Spinks to stay disciplined and execute his plan perfectly. That's a different kind of tough. It's mental. It's about staying sharp for 45 minutes straight. Kawi never gave up trying to land that one big shot. Every round felt dangerous. Spinks had to be perfect with his movement and timing. One slip and Kawi would have been all over him. Fighting someone you trained with is strange. You know their moves, but they know yours too. Kawi understood how Spinks thought. He knew the patterns. That made the mental battle even harder. Spinks had to stay one step ahead of a man who knew him extremely well. Now let's talk about a fighter who proved that even champions can get hurt. Eddie Davis doesn't belong on this list if you just look at the scorecards. Spinks beat him easily. Two judges had it 119 to 109 and 118 to 111. One weird card was closer at 115 to 114, but the final result was never in doubt. So why does Spinks list him as one of his toughest opponents? Because Davis hurt him. Spinks said it clearly. Eddie Davis was really ready. He hurt me. It was a tough fight. Spinks' brother Leon had fought against the Davis family in the amateurs. Leon warned Michael that Eddie was better and stronger. He was right. Davis came prepared. He landed shots that got through Spinks' defense. This is what makes the list honest. Spinks wasn't picking the most famous names. He was remembering the moments that scared him. Even in a fight he won by a wide margin, there was a moment where Davis breached his defenses. That moment stuck with him forever. Davis was a hard hitter. He brought real danger into the ring that night. Spinks survived it and won. But he never forgot what it felt like to be hurt by a man who was truly ready to take his title. That's the kind of honesty that defines this whole list. Spinks remembered the danger, not just the outcome. He gave credit to a fighter most people forgot about. That shows real character and respect for the sport. Let's go way back now. Back to Spinks' second professional fight. Luis Rodriguez was a journeyman. His record was 6 wins, 5 losses, and 1 draw. On paper, he had no business being on this list. Spinks had just turned pro after winning Olympic gold. He knocked out his first opponent in 1 round. Rodriguez was supposed to be an easy step up, but Rodriguez wouldn't quit. Spinks remembered him decades later for one reason. No matter how much Spinks hit him, Rodriguez kept coming back just as strong. He was one of those guys who would never quit. The fight went 6 rounds. Spinks won on all 3 cards. But it was a slugfest. Rodriguez forced Spinks to work for every second. He didn't fold. He didn't break. He just kept coming forward with the same strength he had in round 1. This was Spinks' second pro fight ever. He'd won Olympic gold 3 months earlier. He expected professional opponents to fall like amateur opponents did. Rodriguez taught him something different. He taught him about the grind of professional boxing. In the amateurs, you can win on points by being sharper. In the pros, you have to break men who refuse to be broken. Rodriguez refused. He made Spinks go the distance and earn the decision. That lesson stuck with Spinks for his entire career. The toughness Rodriguez brought wasn't about skill. It was about heart. It was about durability. It was about testing whether this young Olympic champion had what it took to be a professional. Spinks passed the test, but he never forgot how hard Rodriguez made him work. That fight happened in St. Louis, his hometown. The crowd expected an easy win. Instead, they watched a real war. Rodriguez had the best chin Spinks ever saw. Spinks said Rodriguez would never quit. He kept coming back just as strong. That kind of toughness is rare. Most fighters break when they get hit with big shots. Rodriguez just absorbed them and kept moving forward. Now we go back even further. Back to before Spinks turned pro. Back to the moment that changed everything. Rufat Riskyv was a Soviet fighter. In January 1976, a 19-year-old Spinks traveled to Tashkent, Russia for an amateur tournament. He faced Riskyv in a bout that would haunt him forever. Riskyv knocked him down with a straight right hand. Spinks had never been knocked down before in his life. He'd never tasted the canvas. He'd never felt his invincibility shatter like that. But the punch itself wasn't what made Riskyv so important. It was what Spinks learned from it. He said that knockdown lasted the rest of his life. He said he'd never underestimate anyone else again. That one punch created the fighter Spinks would become. It taught him fear. It taught him respect. It taught him that any fighter on any night could have the power to hurt him. That lesson turned him into a tactical master. It made him study opponents. It made him prepare. 6 months later, they fought again. This time it was the Olympic final in Montreal. Spinks didn't underestimate Riskyv this time. He adapted. He outboxed him. He stopped him with a body shot to win the gold medal. That revenge was perfect. It proved Spinks could learn from failure. It proved he could adapt and conquer the very man who knocked him down. But he never forgot the lesson. Years later, when he was a champion, he still listed Riskyv as one of the hardest punchers he ever faced, right there next to Mike Tyson. That's how deep the impact went. One punch in an amateur tournament in Russia taught Spinks everything he needed to know about respecting power. That knowledge carried him through an entire professional career. There's a couple of other names worth mentioning quickly. Eddie Davis, we already covered. Spinks also mentioned Rufat Riskyv as one of the hardest punchers alongside Tyson. Those two names came up when Spinks talked about pure punching power. So there you have it. 6 men who defined the career of Michael Spinks. Each one taught him something different about what tough really means. Riskyv taught him about respect. Rodriguez taught him about the grind. Kawi taught him about relentless pressure. Davis taught him about hidden danger. Holmes taught him about solving puzzles. And Tyson taught him about unstoppable force. Spinks went 31-0 before losing to Tyson. He beat Olympic champions. He beat Hall of Fame fighters. He beat an undefeated heavyweight champion twice. His light heavyweight reign came during the greatest era that division ever saw. He accomplished things no other fighter had ever done. Before Spinks, legends like Billy Conn, Archie Moore, and Bob Foster all tried to move up from light heavyweight and win the heavyweight title. Every single one of them failed. Spinks succeeded where legends couldn't. That's how special he was. That 91-second loss to Tyson doesn't erase any of that. It just proves how high Spinks was willing to climb. He took on the scariest fighter in the world when he didn't have to. He'd already made history. He was already rich. He fought Tyson because that's what champions do. His list of toughest opponents shows the mountains he climbed. These weren't easy fights. These were the men who tested him at every level. Some tested his chin. Some tested his heart. Some tested his mind. One was too much even for him. But Spinks faced them all. He beat almost all of them. And he never stopped giving credit where credit was due. That's what makes his legacy so strong. He wasn't just a great fighter. He was an honest one. Spinks always planned to retire after his first loss. After those 91 seconds with Tyson, he kept his word. He walked away from boxing with his head held high. He'd given everything to the sport. He'd climbed every mountain he could climb. One mountain was just too steep. But that doesn't change how high he got. The 6 men on this list represent different stages of Spinks' journey. From that first knockdown as a teenager to that final knockout as a champion, each man left something behind. They shaped how he thought. They changed how he prepared. They made him better. When you look at the full picture, Michael Spinks was one of the greatest fighters who ever lived. He dominated the light heavyweight division. He conquered the heavyweight division. He did things nobody thought possible. And through it all, he never forgot the men who made him work hardest. That's the mark of true greatness. Not just winning, but remembering everyone who pushed you along the way.